We're here to recognize the contribution of Andrew Gordon Lewis, former registrar of this academy. And this is being done in commemoration of the 50th anniversary and part of our activities for this very special year. The campus pays tribute to Mr. Andrew Lewis for his enduring contribution to the University of the West Indies, and especially to the KFL campus, by naming in its honor the building which houses the Guild of Students. Andrew was the president of the Guild. Mr. Lewis has the distinction of being amongst the first group of students who entered the College of Arts and Science in 1963, graduating in 1967 with the BA Honors Economics and History. And he was awarded the postgraduate scholarship and selected for the BWIA Student of the Year Award for all-round performance. He also has the distinction of being the first secretary and second president of the Campus Guild of Undergraduates. In 1972, Mr. Lewis was awarded the MA in Political Economy from the University of Toronto, and in 1979, the Certificate in Air Transport Economics and Management from MIT. He later received training in University Administration from Salford University, Manchester. In 1980, Mr. Lewis joined the staff of the KFL campus as Assistant Registrar of Administration. In 1982, he was promoted to Senior Assistant Registrar of Student Affairs. In 1987, to the newly established position of Senior Assistant Registrar of Planning, and in 1990, he assumed the office of Campus Registrar, a position which he held until his retirement in 2003. However, his expertise was not lost to the KFL campus as he proceeded to lead the Office of Planning and Projects as director for the next 7 years. Mr. Lewis's quick rise through the administrative ranks came as no surprise, since he brought with him a range of critically needed expertise, developed not only through formal training, but also from his former position as Chief Tourism Development and Planning Officer in the Ministry of Tourism and Aviation, as project manager of the US $2.5 million Hayward Salder Village, and as a corporate secretary to the Barbados Tourism Investment Corporation, 1974-1979. He later served as deputy chair of the Barbados Board of Tourism. These planning and project management skills were brought into immediate use in the crafting of the campus's conceptual development framework. In 1985, the 10-year development plan. 1987-1997, the 5-year strategic plan. 1997-2000, he was responsible for the campus-wide space audit, which provided basis for the design of the Roy Marshall Teaching Complex, and he managed the in-house construction of that complex, which resulted in significant savings to the campus. Over the years, he prepared many successful projects, as well as participated in the negotiations for the funding of several of the facilities on campus, including the Cermes and the Frank Worrell Hall. In addition to overseeing the major construction projects on the campus, Mr. Lewis was responsible for the introduction of a number of administrative firsts, including a comprehensive staff training program and a staff appraisal system, the reorganization of the maintenance department and design of the maintenance manual, as well as the institution of a formal annual staff and retirement awards ceremony. He also promoted an annual health day, established a staff gym, and formulated an occupational safety and health management scheme. When the annual graduation exercise had outgrown the campus space, he proposed and managed its relocation from the campus to the gymnasium. As Director of Plan and Projects, Mr. Lewis either coordinated or managed the implementation of a wide range of capital projects which enhanced the campus's space. These include the Albar Center for Creative Imagination, the CARICOM Research Building, the Institute for Gender and Development Studies, the Bar Unit, the Sadjo and Clicquot Teaching Complexes, the new Administration Building, the KFL School of Business. Former Vice Chancellor Professor the Honorable Rex Netherfield noted in 2003 at the conferral of the Vice Chancellor's Award of Excellence to Mr. Lewis that Andrew Lewis' key roles in the unfolding drama identify him as a major contributor to the building of this part of the University of the West Indies. On Saturday, November 30th, 2013, Mr. Lewis was awarded Silver Crown of Merit, SMC, for his contribution to tertiary education in Barbados through his meritorious institution building work at the University of the West Indies KFL campus. We need to applaud Mr. Lewis for that. So we're here this afternoon to honor a registrar who was par excellence in providing the sort of leadership within the university in a very developmental phase in trying to bring it to this level. I think a lot of the groundwork was laid for what we have today in terms of the registrar of the services at the university. And I have to thank Andrew for that work that he's done in building it to the stage. Let me recognize the former registrar this afternoon. And looking forward to a good evening with you. We had a splendid one on Friday, so this is another good one. So Andrew, we are pleased to recognize your work this afternoon. And in order to go through that process, I'm going to invite our principal to bring remarks. Thank you, Principal.
We have been honoring some great, outstanding members of our community. I do not know the appropriate Latin verse or the author of that verse. He came, he saw, and he conquered. I know there's some classical people here. Caesar speaking to whom? Or whoever. Woodville, you're the man in high school, you did all of that. And all of our honorees so far have been persons who came, looked, observed, and conquered. But Andrew is different. Andrew was born in the place. So he didn't come. Andrew is different. Andrew grew up in the system. He came here as a student. He came up through the ranks, all the way to the rank, so one cannot use the notion of arriving and conquering. Andrew conquered as an indigenous person. Came up through the ranks as a student here. And the implication of that journey, though, is that Andrew really came to be recognized as the soul of KFL campus. Now, I do not make that statement lightly, because in an institution, you're always looking for persons who are what we call the salt of the earth people, the soul and the spirit of the place. Because many of us, you know, we come and we go, we pass through, we arrive, but there are persons who are cultivated and who evolve and emerge in the system and become a part of the system in a very serious ancestral kind of way. And Andrew is really, in my judgment, the person who represents, in my time, the soul and the spirit of the KFL campus. I arrived here as principal around the time that Andrew was about to retire. And I am not sure if Sir Frank will wish to recall this conversation. Already I see his eyebrows are knitted. But he said to me in the corridor in humanities faculty, if you wish to do some things at KFL, you should keep Andrew as your planner. Frank, do you recall that conversation? Yes. And so I approached Andrew and asked him if he could stay on a bit longer, because we had plans for the campus and we needed a master plan. Because you can't do things willy-nilly. You need a master planner. And Andrew became our master planner. So I want to say that we had a lot of fun. Andrew, we had a lot of fun. Each of the structures around the campus, Andrew was responsible for 95% of them that were developed here recently, and we had a tremendous. It was not hard work, it was really enjoyable. And one of my favorite moments was building the 3Ws Oval. The World Cup was announced. The Caribbean was going to host the first Caribbean World Cup. And we thought, if a World Cup is going to come to the Caribbean, UWI must get piece of it. We must be in the mix. You know, the notion of being mixed up in big people's business. We should get piece of it. And so we made a presentation to WICB and then to the ICC. And the argument went as follows. We have Sir Frank Worrell here. Sir Frank Worrell is the heart and spirit of West Indies cricket, and he's here. International ground. And thus the work started. Now, with 3, we had no grass on the field because we had dug up the whole place. We planted the grass and the grass would not grow. And every morning Andrew and I would walk out on the grass and the grass wasn't growing. 18 days, 17 days, and we just have a mud patch. We had some advisors. We had some advisors who were saying to us, the place need more water, more water, more water. And day after day, we were pouring water and the grass would not grow. The rain fell, the grass wouldn't grow. We poured water, the grass would not grow. Then one day, Andrew said, you know, Principal, I think we have been ill-advised. We need to bring in some true experts. So we went down to Sandy Lynn and got the golf people to come up here and do a test. And the golf man came with his attaché case, flipped it open, took out his syringe, pushed his syringe deep into the ground, took out a sample of soil, and he said, you all smell that. Horrible smell. He said, your soil at Kefil is toxic. Too much water. And the reason why your grass is not growing is because there is too much water in the place. Our experts have been asking us to water, water, water. Then we were told, not another drop. And so we were given scientific advice. You have to plug up the whole place, let the oxygen go down in the hole, let the carbon dioxide come out of the place. So the carbon is coming out, the oxygen is going in, and then within 3 days we had full grass cover. In 3 days, we had more grass than we needed. But Andrew, that was it was a lot of fun. But you know, when we finally got our hands again on the Lazaretto lands, we needed the expert advice and skill, because as you know, when government gives you a major asset, you then must go and get it. And it is tied up in all the ministries and everything. And Andrew, there is nobody who knows the corridors of intergovernmental ministerial spaces. The Ministry of Housing, the Ministry of Land, the Water People. Andrew had to go from ministry to ministry, PS to PS, pursuing every corridor in the government. Minister Graves, I see you are smiling, because you know of what I speak. The maze of interlocking governmental forces that you have to pry open the fingers one by one to get the thing that was already given to you. And I can tell you, had not for Andrew Lewis, I think all right now we will still be butting our head from pillar to post in ministries trying to get the land. Then we had the question of the master plan, to set out a vision for what Cave-Hill should look like. And we decided that Cave-Hill ought to be a beautiful campus. There's no reason why Cave-Hill should not be a beautiful campus. And the master plan involved not only the construction of beautiful buildings, and I want to speak about that because Andrew, Jackie, and I had a very clear notion that we were not going to build any ugly buildings. And as you would have heard in the budget debate, when some of our distinguished members of parliament wanted to critique Cave-Hill, one of the standard references was, and they get up there and building all those pretty buildings. And each time reference was made to those pretty buildings, I said, thank God, suppose we had built ugly ones. So we built some pretty buildings. And we created an environment for our students, for our staff, the country and everyone to enjoy. A place to study, a place to work, and a place to visit. And all of that because we had a master planner. I cannot recall how many years Andrew stayed at Cave-Hill in a post-retirement mode. But what I do know is that eventually he ran from Cave-Hill. Because he said, Principal, no further extensions. I have a wife to go home to. And we asked Mrs. Lewis to give us just a little more. But in the end, he says, this is it. I am leaving. I have a family. I'm going home. But it was a wonderful sense of journey, responsibility. He left behind in the planning department a highly skilled, disciplined, and motivated team. And you would have seen all the evidence of the planning department at work in all of these ceremonies and functions. A wonderful team of planners left behind. Then there is always the moment of historical reflection. Andrew, I remember those days when we were given a remit from Sir Keith to semesterize the campus. Now that was a huge undertaking, the semesterization process. And Andrew had planning responsibility for all of that. And I thought then that Cave-Hill became the model campus in that process of semesterization. It was done efficiently. It was done very, very smoothly. And all of those sessions, Andrew, I remember most of them very, very well. We did argue once over one issue. One debate we had, one interesting debate, whether or not we should create schools as opposed to faculties. And that was a 24-hour debate that was fascinating. But what it showed was that you had then an intellectual grasp of what a university should look like, even in its moments of reform. Should we develop more schools, more faculties? How should we find a balance between schools and faculties? And that was an example, in my judgment, of a registrar understanding the intellectual predicaments and working through with all of us. I can, of course, speak to the process of preparing our campus estimates as we went forward to TAC and UGC, because that is where the rubber hits the road. That is where you carry out your full costings of your operations. And after you have costed your operations, then you have to make a judgment. What do you think the governments can bear? And it calls for tremendous skill and judgment as to recognizing the real costs of the campus, but at the same time, recognizing the constraints of government and seeing what they can do. The budgets have really ever reflected the true costs, as Mr. Cook have told us in his wonderful presentation. A balancing act between the real costs, which we have to declare, and what the governments can bear in terms of affordability. And these are all the skills, I must say, that we all learned from Andrew in his role as registrar and in planning. And so, Andrew, your journey has been long and remarkable. From student president, Mr. Powers, registrar, planner, the soul and spirit. And I wish to say that your leadership, Mr. President, in insisting that you bring Andrew Lewis home to you, because you did not wish to have him somewhere in the administration. You wanted Mr. Lewis to come home from whence he came. And from time to time you will say, well, you know, when are we going to have this ceremony? When are we going to have this ceremony? And the reason why we're having this ceremony at this late stage is because Andrew would insist, I am not going to receive any honor from the Cayfield campus until Sidney Martin, Mr. Cook, Sir Keith receive theirs. And he took a position of principle that he will take his at the end. And so we have honored all of his colleagues, and now your conscience is clear. Now we can honor you. And I hope that you are satisfied that we have done it your way. So Andrew, we thank you so much. Mr. President, we thank you for all of your commitment. And this is fitting, absolutely fitting and wonderful. On behalf of the Cayfield family, we all thank you so very much for being the heart and the soul of this campus. And since our students are indeed the heart and the soul of our campus, it is fitting that you should co-join here in this institution. We thank you.
Andrew has been a critical part in terms of the Guild of Students. In fact, I remember the first planning meeting we had for the 50th anniversary, the issue of naming a building after Andrew came up. And I think the point you just made, Principal, he said that he didn't want anything until other people had been honored. So I'm happy that we reached this stage. And therefore, because of the Guild's role in this whole process, I now want to invite Mr. Damani Paris, President of the Guild, to come and make his remarks.
It is my distinguished pleasure this evening to be asked to deliver a few remarks on behalf of the Guild of Students about the renaming of our building in honor of a very distinguished and excellent academic, and more so a son of this academy. It is said that Burke would have speculated that all that is necessary for evil to triumph is for enough good men to do nothing. Mr. Lewis, it is abundantly clear to me and my company that you have done much to ensure that you were not in the company of those who stood idly by doing nothing. Mr. Lewis was given the reputation of a man who led the way and demonstrated that contributions made by former students and former student leaders could be valiant to the university system and to the development of our academy. It is evident from his contribution that even those of us nationally, upon his receiving of the Silver Crown of Merit, have to pause to acknowledge the meritorious contribution that you would have made to this campus. Sir, your loyalty and your contribution inspires us on council to begin to aspire to do greater things, to move from where we are now, to continue to contribute to the university and the academy that has provided so much for us in the ways that you would have done so yourself. On a more personal note, Mr. Lewis, I reflect lightly on my interactions with you as a distinguished individual. I may have been erroneous and slightly misleading you that I had forgotten you and our interaction down at the Royal Bank of Canada on Capel campus. I did not want it to be a situation where you would have realized that would probably be made it into this speech today. But the interaction that I had with him was one that was extremely interesting. At the time, I did not know who Mr. Lewis was, but I had gone down to the bank to conduct some business on behalf of council, and this nice polite old man had stopped me and asked me had stopped me and asked me, Mr. President, I think we need to discuss this education matter. Mr. Lewis went on to make a valiant contribution to the stance that the Guild would have adopted by pointing out, through his magnificent institutional knowledge, some of the essences of things that we should have noted about the budget of the university, what would have happened in the past, and how we would have weathered storms in the past. Sir, without that contribution, the Guild would not have been able to make an informed decision as to what its position could be and what it was defending. It is in that light that I want to point out that Mr. Lewis is forever a Guild president. In fact, Mr. Lewis, I would go so far as to hazard to suggest that you are forever the Guild president. You, sir, have made it abundantly clear that you have always kept the student body of this university at your core and at your heart. I think perhaps, Mr. Lewis, that you will always be the president of our guild, the registrar of the university, the man, the loyal friend, the honorable colleague, and the kind and loving person that you exemplify yourself to be this evening. Sir, I think that these things are so core a part of your being that no matter how hard you try, you will never be able to distance yourself from them. I think therefore it is appropriate that I read a short poem that was written about persons like you at our magnificent academy. Some time ago, 50 years hence, a path was set upon and sent. A people in the darkness were saved repent by a light of Western origin. A suggestion by a man whose vision wide to start a university on this region's side. Another man who saw said, God will provide for the light of Western rising. And so a path which was not yet trod was embarked upon with trust in God to rescue the people of the Lord for this Western path alighting. With sacrifice, blood, sweat, and tears, we carried our hopes, buried our fears, to create, sustain, and cheer the light the West now lighting. Through many years of toils and trials, we brought success throughout the elves, and out of darkness the people fell on the path of Western origin. An academy we were to be, doctors, lawyers, students of history, contributing to the region for all to see, and leading the region from darkness. When alas the western sky, the rising light now soaring high, praise and glory be to God on high, for this light of Western origin. And with this light we did our best, each student adding to the rest his individual light to do their best to light this dark and tortured West. And many came, and many went. The light grew brighter, was heaven sent. The people who their efforts lent were pleased with the light and its origin. And so we see where we are today, where to one individual light we say, thank you for brightening our darkest day with your light of unusual origin. For at this place we left a trail, where a path ensued, and without fail, on our western sky path we shall prevail with the light of western origin. And we can say that we did our best. On the question of time, we have stood the test, and we see our unusual success to be that light rising within the West. Thank you very much, Mr. Lewis.
And I want to invite a colleague of his, Professor Sir Frank Allen, to come and share with us any memories that you have of his associate with Sir Frank, with Sir Andrew.
I first met Andrew Gordon Lewis in early October of 1964. He was introduced to my group of freshmen and freshettes in the capacity of guild president. At that time, the campus comprised two small divisions, natural sciences and arts and general studies. It was very possible at that time that the president knew every student. It was a very small campus. We were encamped on the trade fair site at the Deepwater Harbor. Andrew pursued his presidential responsibilities with great passion. In fact, that is a trademark of the man Andrew Lewis. At that time, this slimly built youngster who wore, I'm telling you the truth, who wore a prominent muff of hair was often seen bedecked in a scarlet undergraduate gown. I concluded that coming from the Waterford fraternity, Andrew had great admiration for the late Gladstone Holder. Remember, Sir Gladstone Holder carried a very prominent muff. Gladstone was good at argument, and so was Andrew. In fact, I thought in the early stages that he was a fireside lawyer. I learned later that he had spent some time in the courts, working in the courts. He stood out among his peers. I wondered why would a fully employed public servant pursuing part-time studies allocate such a large chunk of his time to the building of bridges between students and the administration of the campus at that time, because I considered it a burden. Andrew graduated from the UWI in 1967 with honors in economics and history. And he underwent a whole series of higher training within the next 10 years at University of Toronto, at the Mona campus, at MIT, and so on. He returned to the public service of Barbados in 1973, where he served with distinction in several ministries and agencies of government. Andrew returned to the Caveville campus in 1980 at the level of assistant registrar. I am informed that several of his seniors in the public service of Barbados were uncomfortable with his decision, because Andrew was clearly on a solid upward professional trajectory in the public service of Barbados. During the next 10 years, Andrew accumulated invaluable experience in the management of student affairs and campus planning. In 1987, he was promoted to the rank of senior assistant registrar of student affairs, and 3 years later to the rank of campus registrar. The record shows that in all his assignments, Andrew exhibited his passion for strengthening the campus institutions, enhancing student access to the campus services, and motivated his staff to higher levels of performance. Andrew sees every possible opportunity to enhance the morale of his colleagues. He co-authored several reports with his management staff. In summing up Andrew's contribution to the development of the campus, I think it's fair to state that he built upon the legacy of his predecessors in the office of campus registrar. By example, he motivated his staff to expand their horizons. He enhanced the standing of the campus registrar's office within the University of the West Indies system, and he raised the bar for his successors. I always considered Andrew a hard act to follow. Fortunately, just retired registrar, she was able to hold her own and do it well. One is left to query what motivated Andrew. In discussing our experiences at the secondary level, he revealed to me his fascination with his teachers who were university graduates. At that time, the ratio of university graduate to non-graduate teachers in the majority of Barbados' secondary schools was low. Andrew felt strongly that a successful local University of the West Indies campus could, in his words, exact words, become a pivotal driver of social and economic change in Barbados. Andrew has served the UWI well. The decision by the management of the campus, by the management of the University of the West Indies, to name the building that houses the Guild of Undergraduates after Andrew Lewis is the most fitting recognition of its contribution to the development of the KFIL campus of the University of the West Indies. Andrew, best wishes for a long, happy, and healthy future. God bless you.
Thank you, Sir Frank. Steve Jobs said innovation distinguishes between a leader and a follower. And clearly the level of innovation that Andrew exhibited over the years would place him in the realm of leaders. Bill Gates said, as we look ahead to the next century, leaders will be those who empower others. And we can see Andrew's efforts to empower in terms of the development of the registrar who succeeded him. And I always say the measure of a good manager and a good leader is the ability to develop others to take on the roles that they're leaving. I want to thank him for that, for giving us my boss of the last 7 years, Mrs. Wade, and then she's empowering us to take on the role after she has left. I think that is the legacy, one of the legacies that he's left with us in terms of development of the registrar of the function. You might notice that I made a slight change in the order, but I thought it would be useful to have an opening batsman of a principal, and then a number 5 of a former principal. And therefore, I now want to invite Sir Keith, former principal, to bring remarks.
When in 1963 the first batch of students matriculated at the College of Arts and Sciences in Barbados, the records show that a young man answering to the name of Andrew Gordon Lewis was one of those who had satisfied all the requirements for admission to the BA Honours Program in Economics and History. In that first batch of students were persons like Gilmore Rochford, former Member of Parliament of the Federation of the West Indies, that's a historic statement, and the late Glenroy Strawn, a legend in his own right. Thanks to the availability of a number of scholarships provided by the Canadian International Development Agency and other donors, students from the Eastern Caribbean were able to join students from Barbados, and a small number of students, including from Guyana, who were able to get sponsorship here to join that first class and classes immediately following. If there was any lingering doubt about the demand for increased access to higher education in Barbados and the countries of the Eastern Caribbean, the affirmative resolution was carried overwhelmingly in the performance of many of them in their academic programs, and even more in the successful careers that most of them have led. Andrew Lewis graduated in 1967 1 year later, he went to Mona, where he completed the MA degree program in economic history. I think you came under the influence of Professor Douglas Hall at that time. 3 years later, he would take the master's degree in political economy at the University of Toronto. 1979, he would further extend the range of his competencies via a certificate program at MIT in air transportation, economics, management, and planning. I warn Mrs. Lewis, if the chairman of LIAT calls, refer him to the principal. The university has been the principal beneficiary of the rich blend of multidisciplinary competencies which Andrew acquired in the period before 1963. Let me not fail to pay obeisance to the academy at Commemoration, but also thereafter. In the interval between graduating from Commemoration and his matriculation at the College of Arts and Sciences, he worked as a clerical junior administrative officer in the Office of the Attorney General, the Magistrates' Courts, and the Supreme Court Registry. So, Professor Frank, that's your answer. Though he was not fully registered, he rubbed shoulders with the law. In 1967, he was appointed Administrative Assistant Planning in the Ministry of Health, Housing, Local Government, Sports, and Community Development. Then, in rapid succession, he joined the staff of his alma mater at Waterford in 1968 as Assistant Master History, served at Barbados Community College 1969 to 1974, where he taught economics, and was coordinator for the general education program of that college. Wherever he went so far, he landed on his feet. From 1974 to 1979, he returned to the public service and to the position of Chief Tourism Development and Planning Officer, Ministry of Tourism and Aviation. Following that assignment in the public service that gave him an opportunity to contribute to building capacity in the leading economic growth sector, tourism, Mr. Lewis returned to Cave Hill in 1980 and took up the position of Assistant Registrar Admissions. In 1982, he was promoted to the rank of Senior Assistant Registrar with responsibility for student affairs, student accommodation, including matters like immigration and student welfare. At that juncture, there was urgent need to improve substantially our planning capability at this campus, funds permitting. Andrew's credentials in planning and development had already been tested. For the next 3 years, he built the capacity of the planning unit, and even though the unit was hard-pressed to cope with the increased pressure that was generated by a campus that had embarked on a period of slow but sustained growth, the demonstration of the value of the application of planning skills to exercises intended to address issues related to quality across all aspects of the management of the resources we were given in the faculties and the departments. The importance of all those who were preparing projects for internal or external funding to steer their draft projects through the tricky passage of the scrutiny and help of Andrew Lewis and the overriding scrutiny of our other honorary Victor Cook, who could be depended on to ensure that the draft proposal was finally viable. We did it, and we benefited from it. Then in 1990, on the occasion of the retirement of Mrs. Austin Aline, a colleague who, let us note, has the distinction of having served as a registrar officer at all 3 campuses, first at Mona, where she graduated before, St. Augustine next, and then Cave Hill. Mr. Lewis began his 13-year career as campus registrar thereafter. A significant feature in the list of principal responsibilities of the campus registrar, and I go back to the text, under Andrew's, I almost said reign, was the addition, was interesting things, even for me. I knew he would be secretary to all campus boards and committees, that's formal. Head of central administration, yes. The portfolio that reflected the assignment to the office. And it was under that umbrella that there was the reporting relationship for whoever was working in campus planning and projects into the central administration. The point I wish to make here is that the challenge that we faced for the greater part of our journey at Cave Hill depended on having the right person or persons with the appropriate skills in the right position and often not at market cost. Andrew's experience was but one of many examples of the willingness of staff at all levels to demonstrate total commitment to the university. And I want really to thank not just Andrew, but staff here representing others for your tremendous contribution in making some of us look good, but also in doing your job. Among the projects that drew heavily on Andrew's competence as a planner were, and we've touched on it already, but it could bear repetition, a conceptual framework for development planning at the Cave Hill campus, 1985, 10-year development plan for the Cave Hill campus, 1987 to 1997, 5-year strategic plan for the Cave Hill campus, 1997 to 2002. In light of all this, then, I reflect on the many years that Andrew Lewis has been a member of the university, first as a student, rising to the position of president of the Guild of Undergraduates in succession to Mr. Gilmore Rochford, who was probably the only other officer of the guilds of students on any campus who had the distinction of serving in the federal parliament. And especially, I reflect on the substantial innings that he has played in the registry, and especially the emphasis that he and the now young retiree Mrs. Wade, who succeeded him, placed on addressing the needs and interests of students. It was heartwarming, Guild President, to hear from you this afternoon. In fact, it was the only kind of worry I had as to whether the consultation process not only had been completed, I know it would have been, but whether it had got the endorsement, which I welcome from you. And I think I understand why. Andrew will always be a student, and we need to benefit from that posture. I reflect on the success he has placed by applying best practice skills to facilitate the orderly physical and rail development of the Cave Hill campus in the period after 1980. And this is, I agree with everyone who said it, a most fitting recognition of the tremendous contribution that you have made, sir, to the University of the West Indies at this campus. Congratulations, and I think I know that there will be now a blockage on phone calls to your house. So I need so that you do not be absorbed back into a full-time task too soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Keith. We've heard the achievements of Andrew Lewis over the years on this campus. Master administrator, master planner, academic, teacher, negotiator. You name it, and it seems Andrew can be given the label or the title. And that speaks volumes of the man. So I'm extremely pleased to welcome you to the podium to respond to those remarks that have been made. Andrew Lewis.
I am grateful that Fern and Peter and Sean and my other relatives are here to share this evening with me. Some of us may be saying, I'm glad that this is the last of the series. This has been an uninterrupted trek from one side of the campus to the other, and from this campus to the other campus. So we are probably all worn out. You can attribute that not to the chairman of the planning committee for the 50th anniversary celebration, that is myself, but the principal one, Sir Hilary Beckles. I want to begin this simple exercise of thanks, I want to begin with thanking, I almost said Your Excellency, Dominique Harris, or Guild President, and your executives, and the other members of your executive and your general membership. I want to thank you especially for initiating this proposal to name your building in my name. I should tell you that I was present at a meeting some years ago. Our council, Finance and General Purposes Committee. Then out of the blue came this proposal that this building should be named in my honor. I was speechless, I have to admit that. And the principal is correct. I hesitated. First, because I really did not think I was worthy. And secondly, I did not think that I should be ahead of those whom I regarded as the stalwarts in the building of this campus. I thought of Leslie Robinson, whom we have honored. I thought of Sir Sidney Martin, who recruited me. And before he did, I should tell you that when I sought to teach at the Barbados Community College, and there was some turbulence, Sir Sidney, who had been my principal as student here, and had been familiar with me in the student politics, I am reliably told that you would say he went out to bat for me successfully, and my application at Barbados Community College was successful. I thought of Sir Keith Hunt, who had been my teacher and my supervisor. Now that that stage has been completed, I can now accept, Mr. President, this honor with humility and with a sense of privilege. At the beginning of the celebrations, the Alumni Office invited our alumni publicly to proclaim to the world how this university and campus had positively changed their lives. That was intended to remind all of us of the great debt we owe to the founders, so that many ordinary persons in our society who, along with other benefactors and partners, had made it possible for us as individuals to advance, and to let them know how much we appreciated their assistance in that regard. Let me therefore use this opportunity to say for myself that Cave Hill has made a whole world of difference to my life and to that of my family. I think I can speak still on behalf of my two sons, Peter and Sean, who also attended this campus, to say that we are all grateful for what it has been in advancing our lives. I also want now to thank the many persons who showed confidence in me over the years, sufficient to provide me with the opportunity to succeed. My mother, of course, and especially so. My elementary teachers at St. John's Mid School, and I have to call the name of one Luther Thorne, who prepared me for a scholarship, the Common Mayor, without which I would not perhaps have been able to attend secondary school. that opened the doors to ultimately to higher education. I want to thank all of my lecturers, my teachers at Cape Hill, all of them, and the university management and staffs, Sydney, Leslie, Keith, and most recently, Sir Hilary, for my advancement. And I must say that I would like to thank or go on record in thanking Sir Carlisle Burton, who on 2 occasions dissuaded me from teaching and instructed that my calling professionally would be in planning in the public service. So that he whisked me out of Commemoration, he whisked me out of community college, he whisked me out of the Ministry of Tourism when he understood that planning skills were required on this campus. And that has been my path. He was always there to give me advice and to counsel, and he has gone to the late beyond, but I remember him as I remember Luther Thorne as 2 of my heroes. I must, of course, say a very special thanks to those members of staff who helped me on a daily basis. And so Keefe would say, who were my eyes behind my head. And you will forgive me, of course, if I were to begin with one Laura Yard who's looking directly at me. I think you joined the university almost about the same time I became assistant registrar. And I should say that she was at my side in every position I held on this campus until I asked Mrs. Wade to make sure that her skills were not lost. She was an excellent secretary and administrative officer. I joined in that persons like Phyllis Tate. I'm looking for Allison, and let me not try to call all their names. It would be, see Phyllis? So Keith, you remember Phyllis, that when in 1986, the Minister of Education in short order insisted that there would be a commission of inquiry into the operations of this campus, all the crevices of the campus. 60 piercing questions were posed. I remember Mickey there say, but this is unfair. Why are we doing this for? And I remember to keep saying, look, what we have to answer these questions range from administration to finance to academic programming to planning, the entire spectrum. And of course, Victor the master could produce information, no computers then, just at the warp of a hand. And I think then of his staff, excellent staff. And of course, the person who worked with us, so Keith, weekend on weekend, was Phyllis Tate. She was then on the campus the only person trained in word processing. And I mean, you can type something and you can correct it without rubbing out and pasting over. And there was a lot of that done in order to get the to get the document done. President, let me say this. I was really moved and touched by your remarks. It is difficult to describe the circumstance, the environment, the Spartan environment of the harbor when we joined it. It's good that Evelyn is here and Frank Allen is here. And of course, we got some structures together to ensure good governance and to improve student life such as it could be. And then the opportunity presented itself, Mr. President, for Gilmore and I to visit Mona. I can confess that when I got to Mona, it was probably like the experience that Martin Luther got when he went to Rome. The opulence, it seemed to me at the time, in contrast to the desert almost that we were in. I remember having dinner in Jackie's hall of residence, is it Irving, as a special guest, all gowned. I think I was at the head table as a special guest. A splendid dinner with what you call it, cutlery, with I'm telling you, I mean, it was anything that you could think. It must have been an idyllic community at that time. I later referred to it as the live, learn, and love community at Mona. That is to say, everybody was expected to come there, live together, learn together, and love together. But the loving had to do more with being, having an appreciation of each other as a basis for a strong West Indian nation. Of course, that was obviously an untenable situation because you would have to be building student residences all over the place and to accommodate students in residence. And of course, Aaron Cato found that that did not make sense. And of course, shortly afterwards, we decentralized. So when we came back, Mr. President, and these are still, I'm told, in place, we insisted that we must not be unequal. So we proposed, and it was accepted among our presidential colleagues or whatever you call them, that there would be annual meetings of guild presidents. Still done? We proposed also that there would be inter-campus games, which we would show off. I mean, Lawrence Nurse is not here, but he was a master table tennis player and that sort of thing. We proposed that we would have inter-campus debates. I believe this has gone into abeyance. And of course, Victor, you remember, that dinner suggested to me that we should at least have a Christmas dinner on this campus. And since then, I should say, and it was touched upon, that a large part of my agenda, whether the principal liked it or not, was to focus on the expansion, I mean that's me as an administrator, of student facilities right across the campus. When we got the money, we transformed a building that had been here from the time the campus was built. Everything was in this small building. Your cafeteria, your dance hall, your offices, your recreation, everything. But that didn't make sense, did it? So what we tried to do was to create what you now see. To create a facility for a student health clinic. And those who have a chance could see the opulence here that I saw at Mona in 1964. We thought that we would also, certainly I consider one of my achievements was the conceptualization, Sir Keith, of the Roy Marshall Complex. Why? Because we needed a location for student performances on this campus. And that is the purpose it served until, of course, the Arabara Center for Creative Imagination. And ultimately, Sir Keith, Sir Hilary indulged us in agreeing, I think Lolly Blackett is here, to a master plan for the new acquired property that would provide for an all-weather football field, a FIFA and IAAF approved athletics track, a pavilion which is still in progress, and of course, ultimately, an indoor sports center which would also accommodate our graduation ceremony. That was conceived as a student contribution as part of the new estate at Paradise. So that we thought all the time that since the students are such the core of our university, that they should have the best of the facilities. And I think it was $10 million in bonds that allow us to take that initiative. So I feel a connection with the building. I feel a connection with the guild in terms of any small participation or contribution I would have made in terms of your facilities. And I continue to commit to supporting the guild as part of the campus in all your endeavors. Thank you very much for coming, and I'm pleased and honored by this occasion.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. I'm sure that you will still be a very intimate part of this university. Although you've been recognized today, we hopefully will be able to call on you to assist us wherever possible. Because we still think you have a lot to offer, your man. Right? I think we recognize that we have a cadre of stalwarts who have made indelible contributions to this campus. And like you always are there to represent the campus whenever there are challenges. But I think we sometimes need some persons who are not present on campus to also speak on behalf of the campus and share with the rest of the community. And you've always done an excellent job in providing that support for us. So we'd like to thank you for those efforts. It is therefore then left to me only to invite the front row to proceed and have the unveiling then.